this was an indication just of kind of what it is that I do. I'm a performer, an artist, a researcher. I do a lot of organizational stuff these days, do kind of curatorial work. But this is a little show that somehow this image sticks in my mind as part of this idea of media reveal that I'll talk about today. I guess it's also strange, it's interesting that we're doing this in the middle of the summer. How is everybody's summer? Good? I always feel like people are organizing these things because they don't want Italians and French people to be here in the middle of August. It's just been a topic in a way to think about how my summer has gone, so I'll bring that up again in a minute. Morten hinted at a couple of projects that I wanted to just intro with in terms of people knowing what I do. A project we recently finished up called Shift Register was a series of encounters and exhibitions, pieces and micro-projects taking place in locales where planetary change is measured. These were actions and interventions at biological labs and hydrological meteorological stations all over the world. And they were basically a kind of intended as a critique of this concept of the Anthropocene. And so if I'm thinking about sonics these days, it's fairly metaphoric in terms of how we think about immersion and technological saturation, the way that Morten pointed to earlier. I'm interested in critiquing the Anthropocene and its kind of implications partly as a totalizing concept, and so what we did through this Shift Register project was really visit upon places where the data and the information and the facts of the Anthropocene were being created, so northern Finland and a water research station in Montreal. And I guess the idea was to act in these sites in ways that sort of destabilize this totalizing concept of the Anthropocene. The ways that we have constructed and deconstructed nature and the environment through media and technoscience, but also through variegated things like technological imaginaries, diagrammatic aesthetics, and even magic, is the subject of another project we're about to start called Cycles of Circulation, which is with all of those folks, mostly Carolina Sebeka and Sri Chatterjee. And we're all going to be hearing about that in more and more in the coming years. Also, something that concerns me a great deal these days, particularly as we start to understand the dimensions and requirements of neoliberal art schools and universities, are our own institutional practices. So I'm involved these days in some work, some actual research projects, looking at the ways that communities and institutions are allowing or not allowing for creative and expressive practices to flourish. These are endemic research activities that mostly happen just by doing what we do, right? How we do these things. But they're also kind of explicit ways of addressing pedagogy and practices in institutions. This is with Lucy Kolb and Bernhard Garnischnik, who has a fantastically Austrian name. It's called Institutions as the Way of Life. Another introductory note as to who I am, I run a publication called Continent, which was launched about 10 years ago now, which I co-founded. It's an experimental publishing collective that is energized by a really amazing group of collaborators and friends, including Nina Jager, Paul Shears, Bernhard, who I mentioned, Isaac Linder. And most recently, we've started to reach out to kind of special editors, including the media theorist Anthony Enns at Dalhousie University in Halifax, who's kind of a media archaeology type of fellow. Anthony and I have been lovingly preparing a new issue that will relate to what I'm about to talk about today, this media reveal idea, and it's called Apocryphal Technologies, which is really about the ways that there are sliding scales between imaginary, mythic, and real functional aspects of everything we do with media and technological devices and environments. That is, no matter what political, practical, or technical level we address to media, we must be continually careful not to conscript things to functional or materialist explanations only as myths continue to proliferate. It is this kind of engineering out of magic and power also that is as a source of motivation and energy that helps keep myself and maybe you too from getting cynical, which is in part what I'd like to address today. We do not address those qualities of media that are, for lack of a better term, reserved for imaginary realms very well, mythic, spectral, quotidian, or even enchanted qualities. We risk, therefore, denaturing media art practices and communities through a particular kind of insightful satisfaction and incisive cynicism. Producing an internality to the outside, there is also a concern that keeps these works from attaching to extra art, extra academic concerns and agendas. And that can be quite bad, I think, as and it has contributed to a lot of people's sense. I heard Nina was talking a bit this way last night, that maybe we need to figure out what we're going to do next and what media art kind of should be next. So the reveal is about how we've undone many false promises, we've attempted to achieve all different kinds of transparencies, we've deconstructed and described things all the way down to their base componentry, but these kinds of deconstructions are neither complete nor completely true, because, as I am fond of reminding everyone through Ursula Le Guin, truth is a matter of the imagination. So please watch out for this upcoming journal issue on apocryphal technologies. Another little tiny piece of writing that is out there that might contextualize my lecture today is this recent thing with, in ADESC, which is a kind of Spanish language art magazine, called Message Send Failure, that looks a bit at the ways that different levels of function in media can be regarded. It's important, I think, to recognize how technical media systems fail rather often, or even continuously, but that much of life continues pretty unscathed. We believe that we believe what we need to believe to keep things kind of humming along. Are media technical systems a limited form of human ways of life, or are our ways of life expanded forms of media technical systems? Do things really work more smoothly these days, that is, for being better engineered or higher resolution, or have we simply been taught to expect less and deal better with inherent limitations and failures? The fact that turn it on and off again is kind of a thing that we do in order to kind of make sure that computers keep working is a little bit of an ironic proof somehow of how much orchestration we've been taught by these machines and how to become their caregivers. The reason I wanted to open with a mention of all these people and things is that I'm truly indebted to all of these people who choose to give their patience and generosity to one another and to me in collaboration. I am grateful for this conversation, the exchange of ideas, curiosities, and dreams. These are all things that will inform what this I that stands before you today will be able to say. No shows are ever solo. Being thankful for the community of collaborators, thinkers, ideas, sharers, and projects that we are all quite lucky to be involved in allows me to mention that I have, in fact, actually had a bit of a weird summer. Feeling various kinds of geographic shifts, new expansive collaborative teams, and a number of institutional transformations, while also going through a really deeply felt and personal and community shock that was the death of Sasha Poflap. Leaving us at the age of 41, Sasha was a kind of glowing light in these communities and a joining figure in a lot of the scenes that I have, and I'm sure many of us have variously been conjoined to and part of. This Resound Festival is exactly the kind of thing that I would imagine to run into Sasha at. So I'd like to take a moment to bring Sasha's own transmediality and reverberations into the room as his memory and myth hopefully proliferates. He's someone who continues to inform my thinking, feeling, and imagining. He was someone who understood the importance of the arts and technologies of critical curiosity and media critique, but who was all the while able to maintain an inspiring spirit and imaginative lightness. Sasha had, dare I say, a positive outlook and was truly creative, and these are both terms that are sort of even feel kind of radical to say these days. Sasha Poflap was sensitively and positively curious, and I will always admire and be inspired by that in him. Okay, with those gratitudes in place, hopefully we've all got settled, the coffee's kicking in. Just to remind you, we're in Alborg. This is a keynote lecture by me, Jamie Allen. What we're doing in this room together, this keynote lecture, is a medium, and it's an odd set of conceits and contradictions in itself, as it asks one to try and set a note that is key for what, of course, are a set of very diverse practices and people and lives and geographies and cultures. I might normally just talk about projects I've done and stuff, but I thought it might be kind of fun to try to throw something over the wall and do a little bit of challenging and provocation more generally. That is, after all, kind of the point of these things, so you have something to talk about at lunch, like how did the keynote go this morning? It's kind of okay. However that judgment might fall for us this morning, my plan today is to introduce a concern and a sticking point that I'm having myself as I'm trying to imagine different modes of critical media studies and projects, something I've identified through various conversations as the media reveal. To avoid any misunderstandings, I'd like to point out that what I am identifying is very much also self-reflection and self-consternation, problems I myself have been having about way the critical creative reflexes kind of come up in my own work. Before even talking about what the reveal might mean, I need to admit that I've done a lot of these kinds of projects. So one of them, some people might have seen here, was a big commission at Transmedia in 2014 in collaboration with a fellow named David Gauthier called Critical Infrastructure. It has critical in the name. And was essentially a kind of combination of infrastructure studies a la Susan Lee Starr plus institutional critique a la Andrea Fraser. And we did things like, project the salary of Christopher Gansing on the wall of the HKV. So it was really a reveal project. Also a project that just recently kind of finished up at the Linz FMR Festival that just happened, MAH2019, which was involved an unknown object being sent to various places all over the world in order to have different on-click manufacturing and shipping processes applied to it over and over. It was an explicit attempt to trace the material and digital sort of confluence of art production, I suppose. By the way, MAH2019 is a reference to a misunderstanding of the name MAH2019 and his telephone paintings. I always have to explain that. So nonetheless, despite this being kind of what I've done a lot of, myself and a number of artists and scholars I'm in conversation with seem to be trying to figure out how to shift paradigms of what media artists do and whom it does this to. I would like to ask if you have also come to recognize a mode of both art and study of media that we could call the reveal. I'd like to think with you this week about what alternatives exist to this reveal and what new imaginaries and awarenesses might be most important for us to try to energize ourselves towards. It seems like times might be right for reinvigorating or re-exploring the ways that enchantment, non-irony, vulnerability, and obscurity even are deployed in our arts of the media. The revelatory drive, if I were to start to sketch it, seems to derive in part from strands of materialist and naturalist philosophies of effective access. The real is composed, sought out, and talked about as effective and subjective encounters with its own material force. And it always speaks to me as of this kind of desire for like a raw, cold, signaletic, asignifying kind of encounter. The reveal also incorporates a drive toward empirical methods, taking up practices of quote-unquote direct engagement, also involving things like fieldwork derived from disciplines like anthropology, archaeology, and geology. This is also interestingly pointed out by Shen Mattern to be something that's kind of problematic as it gives way to a kind of rite of passage and is wrapped up in colonialist and gendered ideologies, the macho culture of surviving and suffering for one's art and research. Media is brought back or extracted from hostile terrains as the spoils, allowing us to stake claims to new discoveries and experience. The reveal is also a really wonderful mode of helping to disrobe the emperor in our minds as practitioners and in the popular imaginary. It is incredibly important and impactful to understand things like geological source materiality of media devices, the effect of specific algorithms on human behavior and the logistics of markets, and the surveillance cultures of social media. The revelatory, almost journalistic mode of this kind of critical media making has done much to proliferate such knowledge and deeply makes the point that all of our media imaginaries are made possible by the energies, materialities, geopolitics, and labor that supports them, a cast of characters and a scenography of these materials, people, systems, and histories. If we were to too strongly mine these aspects for their importance and interest, it may even be as a form of what George Lewis, the great ethnomusicologist and improvising musician, called strategic essentialism. So sort of pushing this point almost too hard in order to make it to make it stick. So we should and will continue to enact sensitive reveals, but we must also figure out ways to move beyond the reveal. Once we describe, disrobe, and dissect, perhaps we must also take up the responsibility to set into place new myths, new imaginaries, new stories that we think are important. That expand and link or attempt to construct alliances and build alternatives, be they material, systematic, technological, or imaginative. Otherwise, all kinds of strange forces, global warming deniers or cold truthers, for example, can rush in and put Humpty Dumpty back together however they see fit. Beyond the reveal, we might find the responsibility not only to remove illusion, map agencies, question mythology, and dispel unfounded belief, but also to create new such agencies, new invitations, new motivations, and new communities that explore outside the interiority of art, literature, science, and philosophy, and kind of infusing these with a new kind of energy and intention. So I'd like to ask these questions with you. I'm not likely to give you many answers this morning. All I have to share is my questioning. And I should also mention once again that I probably won't talk about sound explicitly very much. So here are some questionings. What energies and relevances can be recovered in media art and research that are generative of the presence and intentions needed to allow good things to grow? What will allow and not inspiration and not cynicism to thrive in practices of both media art and academia, always institutional? What will allow new voices and perspectives to be heard? If we are indeed, as Siegfried Zielinski has proposed, in an era that is after the media, in the sense that these arts we engage with having any kind of sensory, motivational, or political force, where do we turn? What should we do next? Particularly given current environmental and humanitarian crises on planet Earth, we should consider how human activity through media has helped to reimagine and re-engineer always changing planetary drives. As once supposed predictable systems are now pushed into states of novel, precarious instability, it becomes pretty clear how little we control or understand or can represent. And yet the constructivist and holistic drive of some technoscience, including our technological art, makes the Earth itself into an object of manipulation, a medium for mass collective self-experimentation. Our cycles of circulation project is largely about geoengineering as a kind of effect of the medium. Ours is a condition that begs for renewed imaginaries that give us an image of a grounded earthly condition, new, always ambiguous, media practices that grapple with laterality and the obtuse, distorted, and uninterpolatable depictions of an incalculable planet. We are not steersmen. This is the kybernetes, or the cybernetic steersmen, that elliptic cybernetic media sciences have propped us up to be. If we are able to listen well and harmonize at all with nature, it is as things also embedded in that nature, not above or outside, steering or stewarding. Harmonious wholes are nowhere to be sought or found. As such, an imaginary would presume us able to orchestrate a symphony of natures that have never been in our control. Productive knowledge practices in art, media, research, and the everyday should ground and attach us to our cohabitant beings as beings that each contain multitudes and that can never be entirely revealed. The critical project of art in academia, if we can still call it that for all the steam it has lost, embodies positions of perspective, geography, class, and status that are, for the most part, detached and distanced. Problems of knowledge and critique can be seen to be organized around this philosophical theme of proximity. Amongst the criteria of objectivity are that we get away from what we observe, that we get, for example, off or out of Earth, for example, in order to properly observe it. To see it as a whole and to get the necessary distance that we suppose gives a clearer view. This kind of abstraction is something that sort of proceeds unabated everywhere in life. We are close to people that we love and know well and feel open around. Friedrich Nierat does a good job of explaining this unlocatability of the concept, this desire to get outside in philosophy and art. He writes, philosophy would not have been possible without an out of place, that unattributable dimension in which it is sometimes too strongly identified. Philosophy is, however, not the only thing to suffer from this identification, this adhesion to nowhere. All cultural emanations, literature, science, religion, art, phenomenalize atopia to different degrees. All creation, singular or collective, draws on the possibility of constituting an artistic or theoretical interiority to the outside. Simply put, this is why we can talk about an art world, right? Because it's outside of the world. In a similar vein, Lorraine Daston and Peter Gallison identify in modernist aspiration that people in this outside have towards knowledge that bears no trace of the knower, knowledge unmarked by prejudice or skill, fantasy or judgment, wishing or striving. It is objectivity as blind sight, seeing without inference, interpretation, or intelligence. One such an objective knower is composed and ensconced in his, and it is usually a he, Northern European utopia. It is from this metaposition that critique pulls off some of its most productive and most violent reveals. The fabrication of scientific fact and the bifurcation of nature, as just two rather central examples, reveals that much current media art scholarship and cultural production remains in reaction to, including this lecture. And yet the demands of critical demythologizing and radical transparency sometimes supersedes the concerns of communities of practice, and ignores, amongst other things, the presumption of privilege that allows a person, a thinker, to effect the kind of distance and detachment that allows an exit to this imagined outside in the first place. Who is it that is authorized to sit out here, way out here, and observe, capture, represent, and change real territories with what amounts to a very, very distant map? Such fantasies of getting away, of escaping to a place from which we can all capture all and reveal all, is, as Sarah Sharma points out, also a highly male patriarchal fantasy, driving desires and motivations in art, media, technology, science, and other everyday and knowledge practices. It is an outsider position that gives false advantage, and one that allows for two other rather common next maneuvers. Once outside, it becomes possible to apply constructivist principles to nature through description, in short, to reveal. Constructivist description allows for reconstruction and the redesign of means and mechanisms for entire life worlds. Here, media reveals us, our values, and our projections, in a sense. On the screen is just one little example. This is how natural systems, once totalized from the outside, can be described through exchanges and services, and which are hugely popular motivations of conservation efforts and reactions to the Anthropocene movement. This is part of a constructivist alliance with holism, which, although often associated with a spiritual sense of interdependency and connection, is also chiefly a philosophy that posits parts of a whole in intimate connection. And that means we can dissect these things in order to find these parts, render them and represent them clearly, transparently, and then potentially, put them into reconfigurations. A second thing that our outsider stance can allow is for us to be in a continuous state of shock. A position of detached privilege that is also one from which we are constantly just blown away by stuff like, oh my God, somebody made this computer. And like, oh, there's a piece of Africa in my pocket. These kinds of moments of complete disbelief. Or somebody's tracking my data on Gmail. This kind of moment of feigning disbelief, I would say, in the truism that power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. No.
The wrath of the great and powerful Oz. I said, come back tomorrow.
If you are really great and powerful, you keep your promises.
Do you presume to criticize the great Oz? You ungrateful creatures think yourselves lucky that I'm giving you audience tomorrow instead of 20 years from now. Oh, the great Oz has spoken. Oh. Pay no attention to that man behind the curtain. The great Oz has spoken.
Who are you?
Oh, I am the great and powerful Wizard of Oz.
You are? I don't believe you.
No, I'm afraid it's true. There's no other wizard except me. You humbug! Yes, it's exactly so. I'm a humbug.
Oh, you're a very bad man.
Oh, no, my dear. I'm a very good man. I'm just a very bad wizard.
It's such a sad line, huh? I having rewatched this and sort of finding little moments of reveal in media and film, I couldn't help but feel really bad for the wizard at this moment. Like he's sort of this. He's got some serious intimacy issues, and he's really suffering from the patriarchy. So revealing maneuvers can be means of distancing ourselves from those things about which we really care. That is, postures we are able to adopt when we pretend that we cannot leave home, just as we know there is no place like it. And like Dorothy, we know that in reality we can never really go anywhere. We are at home the whole time, dreaming up the adventures of Oz as detachments, distance, escapes, and reveals. The atopic positioning as outsider is classically bourgeois, and can be, as such, rather difficult for those people who must choose or live inside to bear the brunt of it. This is related to something we might call, in true personal and professional friendship to the scholar and man, Latour's mistake. Always concerned with the state and import of intellectualism and self-critique and critique, Latour now diagnoses how constructivist analyses of situations under study can denature or even often offend the situation studied. Very often depiction and description become forms in our conflicted and contradictory modernist Western culture of denigration and diminution. This is, mind you, perhaps just a variation on the grammatological violence of naming that has been going on for quite a long time, so you can hardly blame Bruno personally. Whereas constructivists reveals as descriptions of practices like objectivity from the outside were intended to offer researchers, scientists, and other fact makers a different representation of themselves in order to make it possible to increase trust in these institutions, they may have had somewhat the opposite effect. Latour now writes how the alternative versions of how objectivity is produced by my colleagues and I have proposed in order to account for the fabrication of objectivity has been hotly contested by some of the very researchers whose values we were trying to make comprehensible at last to others. The very words network and fabrication are sometimes enough to shock our interlocutors, which only shows how badly we have gone about it. What poor diplomats we have been. Latour is these days very, very aware of the ways in which his own critique as reveal work may have developed into two blunt instruments of the reveal, but the massively influential work and tools he and his colleagues derive from deconstruction as constructivism for the analysis of the practices and interactions of humans and non-humans wound up leaving a lot of people feeling rather unhinged and picked apart. Helping to participate in a world in which institutional trust and epistemic allegiance, the common world that Latour seeks, has been rendered a little bit more difficult. He notes how the work of description could better be deployed in ways that give more space to other values that are very commonly encountered, but that did not necessarily find a comfortable slot for themselves within the framework offered by modernity. More comfortable slots call for not critical distance, but critical proximities, I would say. Acknowledgement that intimacy and desire, myth and story, co-compose the space of real situated materiality. If we are, as Latour himself has, to try to learn from Latour's mistake, we may ask in what ways media and its arts can collapse distances, do away with outsides, and instead enter into conversation with the attachments and affinities of those we would like to speak to well, and speak well of. Extracting particularities from the universal instead of the other way around is, after all, what media seems to be good at helping us do. Just as distance precipitates the possibility of nature to strip bare to reveal, historical time affects similar retreats. We love to imagine great moments of media historical rifts, where the extra experiential mediums of vision and sound have, we are told, been ruptured and revealed by new realities, new epistemes of media. Media technologies in our historical narratives are often the very means of enlightenment, opening new realms of knowledge to naive subjects and kind of naive onlookers. Muybridge and Stanford's famed demystification of the horse gallop through photography brings about a media reveal that we understand dispels the romanticism and reduces a particular kind of awe people once felt for horses in full gallop. As Rebecca Solnit writes in her excellent book on the technological Wild West of California, River of Shadows, the real, objectivized movements of horses dismayed artists and amused members of the public when Muybridge's instantaneous photographs revealed them as much more complex and kind of ungainly than the rocking horse gallopers in paintings. And I was just wondering if you think it's weird that I feel kind of bad for the horse the same way I feel bad for the wizard. They sort of have to give up their mythic power somehow, and their motivating mysteries. Brought into realms of supposed non-human objectivity, whatever that might mean, media often seem to come along to draw curtains back, pull rugs out, and destabilize entire continuities of attachment, practice, and naive humanism. Wolfgang Ernst writes of this as his cold gaze of media archaeology, a vision in which media themselves actively render insights which have otherwise been inaccessible to humans whose temporal window of immediate perception of events is neurologically limited. For Ernst, media are also themselves a technique of remembering the past in a way that is radically alternative to historical discourse. Through Lorraine Daston and Peter Gallison's incredible book, Objectivity, we have another, probably less well-known tale of revealing medias, aiding and abetting new epistemic virtues. British physicist Arthur Worthington, the Splash Man, as Daston and Gallison call him, inaugurated part of the science of fluid dynamics in his depictions of the shape and formation of liquid drops as they land on a plate to his naked eye under a stroboscope, which he did for 20 years. His highly empirical liquid studies took place over the period between 1875 until he was finally able to capture these splashes with a photograph in 1894. His eyeball findings were that liquid drops could be visually modeled by symmetry and regularity, suggesting a generalized account. And so all of his pictures that he drew were circles, mostly, and symmetrical. But then Worthington's hand drawing of these tenth of a second moments gave him a true intimacy with both experimental apparatus and the matter under study, but one that we might say, with 20/20 vision hindsight, was just plain wrong. Upon the introduction of strobe photography, he belatedly came to see his fallible, painstaking efforts of 20 years to impose regularity as counting for much less than a mechanical record of the photograph. It would be media that would give us a real as opposed to imaginary fluid, says Worthington. The mind of the observer is filled with an ideal splash, the auto splash, whose perfection may never actually be realized, and it turns out it never is. Daston and Galison write. The shape of each droplet impact, it turns out, was not at all symmetrical, but idiosyncratic and rather random in its non-pattern. Worthington's case is interesting as it evokes a number of lessons about media reveals. Amongst these is that we are told, and Worthington himself told himself, that one of these methods of representation must be completely discarded. We must choose between fallible human attachment and the in- or non-human mechanical objectivity of technical mediation. The reveal here gives up reality's full-blown complexity as asymmetrical individuality, the very symbol of what Patricia Reed has called solidarity without sameness, but it may leave humans on the outside. The construction of objectivity that Daston and Galison write about is imposed by the media machine as a false detachment between practices of instrumentation and media and human motivation, intimacy, and desire. This cold gaze of media archaeology, likewise, has never seemed that cold to me, as there's always someone somewhere selecting or making media for particular purposes, recording this or that particular thing, or for this or that particular reason, and these are all decisions driven by the hot blood of human desire and its projected imaginaries. Worthington, in the end, was a very good man who also turned out to be a rather poor wizard, for whom I cannot help but feel sympathy. His story is an allegory of the discarding of critical proximity, throwing the baby of material intimacy out with the bathwater of bias and projection. How could the history of epistemology have retained Worthington's nearly 2-decade devotion to a rather spurious knowledge practice, while as well being admissive to the heterodox multiplicities for which new technical media perspectives can allow? It is probable that those of us who have worked in, with, and through media for many years are caught up in metaphors of covering and uncovering mediums and messages, imaginaries, and reals. Media are, after all, tricks, redescriptions of one thing in terms of another, not what they appear to be. They are, in short, a kind of joke. In his wonderful essay, Let There Be Irony, Wolfgang Ernst acknowledges this truly fundamental secret of technological media, precisely that they usually hide their mechanisms in order to let their message appear in pure form. Steeped in experiences and epistemes of media, could it be that we are all truly predisposed to the reveal as part of a scenography of artificiality, technical fictionality, and artifactuality in which we are steeped and like to think about? As people informed by media epistemologies, could it be that we are particularly susceptible, even addicted, to the particular satisfaction of the irony of the reveal? The reveal points to a set of very deeply rooted scenographies of modernism, dramaturgies of knowledge production and representation. Modernity, in fact, may be constituted precisely by these very contradictory scenographies, and they are, of course, written into our modern technologies and our media arts. Alice Galloway writes of these dynamics as a distinction between context and medium in both art and technology, in a great little essay he wrote about the work of that artist Jody, called Jody's Infrastructure. It's in eFlux. He writes, 2 basic activities emerge. A person may work on the digital or within it. In the former, one's attention is directed from the outside in, taking the medium itself as its object, while in the latter, one takes the perspective of the medium itself, radiating attention outward to the other contexts and environments. To generalize from this, the first position, working on, is labeled modern, or, when applied to art and aesthetics, modernist. And the latter position, working within, is labeled non-modern, be it pre-modern, post-modern, or some other alternative. Galloway goes on to characterize Jody's work, which, as many here will know, is largely about kind of how the internet operates and its affordances and limitations, Gallery calls this infrastructural modernism. This infrastructural modernism shows up all over the place, driving media cultures of art and design, and accounting, I think, for continued ironic fascination with things that provoke our sense of wry amusement about the technological absurdity in which we all partake. In the everyday things, like this, we see this kind of chuckle or smile that comes out because of how they reveal the disjunction between the image that is or the systems that we're using to kid ourselves, and the rest of the time, and it's averse. It's kind of materiality, technical materiality. There are these constant discussions about where the internet is born, lives, and dies, which sort of partakes of this intention towards the reveal. Glitch art is an area that also constantly evokes this play of medium specificity and ironic reveal. Rosa Menkeman has pointed this out. And my friend Rosemary Lee, who's in the room somewhere, has done a couple wonderful projects, one of which called the Multimedia, which simultaneously divulges the kind of dumb materiality that are the origins of electronic media culture, but also suggests its return to that point. So she quotes Leibniz's earthly composition of scattered vestiges of old things, of plants, animals, and artifacts wrapped in a new coat of stone. Really new projects like Evan Roth's Red Lines project, which is fantastic, recursively enacts the distance that keeps us at arm's length through the slow network latency of peer-to-peer broadcasts, while at the same time bringing visual proximity to the real infrastructure of coastal sites around the world where cables that make the internet possible emerge from the sea. So I hope I'm not being overly critical, because I think that these sorts of works should exist, continue to exist, and can be made. I probably will make a few myself before I go into early retirement. But it is interesting to note that these dimensions of reveal and irony in such projects, and how their treatment of technical systematicity or media irony always partakes of a strange, kind of sardonic, modernist paradoxicality. So, having sketched out the reveal as a mode of thinking and doing a little bit, I'd like to ask what it might mean to go beyond it. I don't really have a quick answer for that, as I promised to not have at the beginning of this lecture. But I've been starting to compile a few places to work, or to look at this. One example that I've come across is from our Nordic sister, Bjork.
Hello, it is Christmas time and I'm sitting here by my TV. I've been watching it very much lately because I'm on holiday, and I've been seeing all those programs about all sorts of things, about Icelandics being very happy about Christmas, very gay, and also very serious and spiritual, and also seeing Icelandic comic people making jokes, which they are very good at. But now I'm curious. I've switched the TV off, and now I want to see how it operates, how it can put me into all those weird situations. So it's about time. This is what it looks like. Look at this. This looks like a city, like a little model of a city. And all the houses which are here, and streets. This is maybe an elevator to go up there. And here are all the wires. These wires. They really take care of all the electrons when they come through here. They take care of that. They are powerful enough to get all the way through here. I read that in a Danish book this morning. And this beautiful television has put me, like I said before, in all sorts of situations. I remember being very scared to it because an Icelandic poet told me that not like in cinemas where the thing that throws the picture from it just sends lights on the screen. But this is different. this is millions and millions of little screens who send a light on you, some sort of electrical light, I'm not really sure, but because there's so many of them, and in fact you're watching very, very many frames when you're watching TV, your head is very busy all the time to calculate and put it all together into one picture, and then because you're so busy doing that, you don't watch very carefully what the program that you're watching is really about. So you become hypnotized. So all that's on TV, it just goes directly into your brain, and you stop judging if it's right or not. So you just swallow and swallow. This is what an Icelandic poet told me once, and I became so scared to television that I always got headaches when I watched it. But then later on, when I got my Danish book on television, I stopped being afraid because I read the truth, and that's the scientific truth, which is much better. You shouldn't let poets lie to you.
2 media art history conferences ago in Montreal, I was in a small discussion about archiving failure, in which a very smart guy by the name of Mark Hayward was tracing a failed project of Canada's first and only mechanology centre. It was an idea for a centre for the study of humanistic technological empathy, propelled in the early 1960s by the little-known techno-philosophy and computer science buffs at the University of Western Ontario, about 2 hours from where I grew up. The strange, rural, esoteric Canadianness of these projects, of course, appeals to me greatly, but even beyond that, there was something Mark said about them that really stuck in my head. Mark Hayward located the institutional project of this mechanology centre somewhere between philosophy and logistics, between the literary imaginaries of Gaston Bachelard, the critical poetry of Jacques Lemoine, and the techno-integrationism of Gilbert Simondon and Jacques Lafitte. What results, he called a kind of infrastructural reverie. And these 2 words in a row have stayed in my mind ever since. Along with Galloway's infrastructural modernism, the suggestion of infrastructural reverie is stuck in my mind as a principal component of what could be added to much of the work we do to unmask, reveal, dissect technologies and media systems. That is, to imagine, recompose, remythologize, and reimagine what new meanings and configurations might be possible. Not just leave Humpty Dumpty in the pieces on the floor, but pick up those pieces and put them back together again, hopefully in new ways. What might be made of this idea of the infrastructural reverie as means of ensuring that equilibrated focus is put on both the practices of people and the systematic determinism that they may get caught up in. What could it mean to revisit attachments that people have to the technological realities of their lives in this moment of rather conservative technological and political concretization? How do we account for the necessary relationships between stewardship and care, critique and knowledge, privilege and investment in the critique of media and its arts? How might we, as media people, reinforce these relations and not just point at or to them? What would it be like to take the responsibility to create new imaginaries in place of those we have proven we can ironize and denature? I invite us all to think through these questions together. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jamie.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Hello. Just a minute.
Maybe I should leave that on.
Well, let's see if it works this. I've lost it before. Okay, so thank you very much, Jamie. Fascinating talk. I have some questions myself. Sorry. Oh.
I have a cold. I'm sorry.
We are both very good at this. I wondered if there are any questions, then please feel free. We have some time to. Doesn't work, huh? Yes, maybe it does. Hello. Now it works. Okay, so if there are any questions for Jamie, it's not on purpose. It's not because I want to resound. It's the mic. Okay, so yes.
I want you to do that. Oh, wow. Oh, I have to go all the way up.
thank you very much for a fascinating talk. Actually, I have a question that just crossed my mind right now when you were finishing your brilliant presentation. What about the technologies that are so opaque that there is nothing to reveal, or revealing anything is just too difficult? And for example, AI, right? These days, it is, I would say, kind of a black box. Isn't this opaqueness? Doesn't it contribute to its magical quality in a way? So that's something that just occurred to me.
I understand the question. I think one of the most dangerous things is to presume that in advance. So, like, there are many ways to pick apart AI. I mean, these are people, sitting in offices programming these algorithms, and then they get into popular imaginaries through things like popular science writing and that sort of stuff as these black boxes. But that, for example, in that technology, I don't think a moment of concretization has happened. So we can actually have interventions in that world if we presume it not to be black box already, if you see what I mean. And so I think a lot of the time what is interesting about the kinds of reveals that we have done a lot of, I think, in the kind of 90s and 2000s and teens, especially in infrastructural art and stuff like that, is that it's proved how few times that is true. Like, it's very often not true. And if you feel that way, then it's interesting to talk about it, like why it is that projection has done its job so well so early on in a technology that's not even really in our midst yet.
Actually, I was thinking about this opaqueness coming not from the technological side, but very often it is the outcome of a corporate logics or logistics, where you don't have an access to the actual information and how it operates. That's the essential essence of my question.
Yeah. I guess what I'm trying to point to is that kind of scenography. It's not that it's good or bad, of course, but it's that cultural studies, media studies, and media arts has done a lot to sort of talk about this kind of cold gaze idea that somehow a technological object shows up almost as an alien creature that we then study as a kind of art object, which is a lot written into sort of media art and media archaeological discourse, is just as dangerous as what that corporate world is doing. It's not allowing all of the kind of non-objectified, non-distance, even productive economics, productive engineering stuff that's going into those things to voice itself or to be shown quite as much. Yeah.
Okay, I'll take here.
Thank you for your talk, especially the storytelling part and the Europocentric storytelling, because I was thinking about different stories, not about stories where it's the man behind the machine, sort of godlike figure authority that gets the reveal. I was thinking of Ghost in the Shell, when you have the reveal of an infrastructure and you join in, and sort of there's no coming back home kind of situation. And I'm also thinking that on the level of cybernetic notion of observer being part of the system, sort of he's never apart from that. There's actually no outside to deal with. And with sort of the social construction of knowledge, and the Latour problem is that he used storytelling, but no one actually get that. And he's like the golden star of those kind of social construction of truth. And I'm thinking more of works of Isabel Stenger's, where she has I wouldn't say a reveal, but a position of an idiot. Authority sort of changes into being an idiot, and the reveal changes. So my question is about, if you're in a position of authority that the reveals enables you to, how do you sort of deal with that? And is there a possibility, how would you deconstruct, as a keynote speaker in conference, deconstruct the authority figure of the sciences and sort of like you're debunking the objective mechanism?
Yeah. That's awesome. I would like to have asked that question at the end of my presentation as well. Brilliantly phrased as well. I think there's two things I would say. Like the revealing itself is not, again, not fundamentally bad. There are many different styles of doing that. So there's the notion of the idiot, the notion of the naive observer, the kind of the critical humanities. These are all kind of part of a continuum, I would say, in that sort of francophone science studies world as well. I mean, I'm trying to always think about ways that, since you invoked my position up here, and somebody who runs research projects and does artworks and things like that, it sometimes is a question about what it is that you can speak well and of as who you are, right? And so I also think there's something we need to really antagonize about the generalism of research practices. Like my position as an ethnographer, for example, in a feminist technology collective in Vienna is a lot different than someone else doing that. And so I have to sort of think about what my representational, my identity politics, my framing, my epistemes, all this stuff are bringing to bear in those situations, and maybe I just shouldn't be there, right? And so I feel like we need to think about, like both the style of engagement of if we're going to enact these reveals, how sensitive they are, how many different factors they take into account, how much they seem to be coming from not from the people involved in these practices, and then also think about who we are without control, like things that I can't control about myself and as identities and ways of thinking. So those are two limitations. I don't know how to do that, though. I mean, this is the thing. Like it's a very specific question about what would you do at the Feminist Technology Collective in Vienna. Would you work with another collective that would help study them, or kind of try to compose specific solutions? I think.
Okay. Here's one, and then it comes down.
Okay. There's one over there as well.
You mentioned. It's lovely. There's a 70 millisecond delay between the voice here and it comes back from the thing. You mentioned magic in passing. There's a British magician, hypnotist, and so on called Derren Brown who purports to reveal things, and usually he doesn't. It's a fake reveal. For example, he gets advertising executives to come up with a design for an advertising display. And he then writes something in an envelope, and cut a long story short, what they came up with is what he wrote in the envelope. He then shows you how he does it. He takes them in a bus on a trip to where he's going to do the broadcast from, and they go past various hoardings and so on, which will all be constructed to give them subliminal messages so that he can... Okay, this is complete bullshit, because actually he's using old magic tricks to sort of get the right answer in the envelope. Now, I wonder if you think that there might be a kind of taxonomy of false, fake, whether deliberate or not, reveals.
Yeah, it's a cool example. I think that he might get along with Bjork. Like, there's something in there about recomposing. I've had the opportunity to show that video to classrooms full of hardcore electrical engineers, and the amount of anger that comes out of them. What do you care about electrons? You can't care about electrons. But the taxonomy is, I think it's probably a kind of meta research program that I'm on. The apocryphal technologies issue that I mentioned at the beginning is really about the notion of fakes that are intended to actually, nefarious fakes, shall we say, like things that are intended to trick people and make money, or what have you. My favorite example, and which I worked on quite a bit, is the lie detector, which has never worked and has never been an actual functional thing. So that's a kind of revealing that it's like Mythbusters style revealing. What you're describing there, I actually like. I think it's a great example, because it's somehow, in a way, like a probing that obviously has a value system behind it and shows how kind of ridiculous marketing systems could be, and how it's just a bunch of people in a room coming up with this stuff, and this sort of thing. So that would be another kind of taxonomy, like some kind of Bjork-like poetry that can re-explain something in a way that's not untrue, right? But also gives you a kind of understanding about it that maybe isn't depressing or essentialist. Mm-hmm. So that'd be great. I mean, we could talk about taxonomies of reveal for hours.
We have time for one more.
One here.
Up here.
Thank you. I have sort of a comment and then a question. And the comment is that I was at Transmediale in 2004, and I feel like we encountered in the conference a really similar moment that we're sort of at now in this moment in the room, which is that it was immediately following the U.S. attack on Iraq, and we had this. The theme of Transmediale that year was "Fly Utopia." And so the sense was what kind of positive or utopian thinking might be possible given the kind of overwhelming forces of militarism that we had all just witnessed, because of this war that had begun that most people did not support. And the thing that was really distressing about the conference that year was that this gathered group of people felt as though there was not really a critical point of solution or the possibility of other kinds of imaginaries. Like, we were caught in our own problematics, and I felt like the people out there who are building weapons and ordering them to strike are not having these problems. They're not in any doubt about the kinds of narratives that they're constructing, or at least they're not sitting here in a room thinking like, is it problematic that I'm thinking about this aspect or this other aspect? And so this is not to say that we shouldn't be self-critical, but I sometimes feel like in our desire to not reproduce these destructive worldviews, we also make it more difficult for ourselves to even sink deeper into methods that may not be problematic exactly, but maybe it's just about doing them more often or doing them more deeply. So in terms of the reveal, I totally appreciate the points that you're raising, but I also feel that perhaps part of it is not to look for another innovation, but more to say, what can we do more deeply with the reveal? What's possible if we think more deeply about witnessing, for instance? Is it the fact that we need to continuously reveal because we simply aren't able to reconstruct those or bring those narratives into the mainstream to the degree that we would like to? That someone is still building a giant server farm in Atlanta, and we need to be reminded of it over and over again because the popular narrative of the ephemerality of wirelessness is so tenacious. So I guess that's sort of not a comment, but I just wanted to throw that out.
Yeah, I agree and support everything you said. I think also the last thing I would add to your comment is there are new generations that don't know these stories, and one might, by jettisoning these techniques or these ways of thinking, just be participating in kind of weird academic novelty of like, I'm tired of that idea, and I've heard about it at too many conferences, and I don't want to do that either. I think depth is great. I mean, like, that's kind of another way of saying what I hope I was trying to point to, is that we need to reveal and do something else. I mean, maybe I'm a little more concerned with the fact that like this denaturing, which I like as a word, tends to just leave this gap of like pointing at the thing and not really recomposing a new narrative. And this is why I'm fascinated in kind of joking ways about this Bjork thing. It's like there's a nice way in which it doesn't just, although she makes this joke about poets and science at the end, but there's this nice way in which she doesn't just leave the constructivist project unfinished. She reconstructs, and that I find just incredibly inspiring, because also of this. I mean, you could reconfigure everything I said just in terms of like the failure of the left, and there's a whole political dimension to just being kind of like flabbergasted that Trump is president, right? Like, oh my God, and this is kind of the issue. And I think I'm just agreeing with what you're saying. There's so much to do in terms of both, becoming very incisive about those reveals, but then I think also we need to recompose a political and ideological structure around the things that we've decided are bad, and we need to point out are bad, but then also need alternatives to, parallels to, and new imaginaries for.